dnešním dílu pořadu Svět okem Raptora se podíváme, jak Čína navázala partnerství s Afrikou a zahájila obrovský rozmach infrastruktury na celém kontinentu. Poslechneme si krátký projev prezidenta Si Ťin pchinga k čínsko-africké spolupráci a ukážeme si, jak se liší spolupráce od kolonialismu. Čína v posledních desetiletích výrazně posílila své partnerství s Afrikou a zahájila rozsáhlé infrastrukturní projekty napříč kontinentem. Tento rozmach začal zejména po roce 2000, kdy se v Pekingu konalo první fórum o čínsko-africké spolupráci, což otevřelo novou éru ve vztazích mezi Čínou a Afrikou. Od té doby spolupráce vzrostla na zcela novou úroveň, přičemž Čína investovala do různých odvětví, včetně energetiky a průmyslu. Jedním z významných projektů je například solární elektrárna v Zambii, kterou postavila čínská společnost. Tato elektrárna přispívá k rozvoji zambijského průmyslu a poskytuje pracovní místa pro místní obyvatele. Čína také investovala do průmyslových parků, z nichž jeden v Etiopii vytvořil tisíce pracovních míst a přispěl k růstu tamního HDP.
To feed the bottomless appetite of capitalism, China needed to find new consumers.
Where does China have their eyes set on now? Africa.
First, China approaches a small impoverished nation, usually in Africa, with an offer it can't refuse.
But what's the truth behind these criticisms of China? In 2000, with the first forum on China-Africa cooperation taking place in Beijing, a new era in China-Africa relations was opened. Since then, their cooperation has catapulted to a new level. China has partnered with Africa and launched a huge infrastructure boom across the continent. However, not everyone is happy, especially some in the West. Those who have their own ulterior purposes claim China's investment is far from altruistic, that in fact, China is using Africa as the dumping ground for its extra industrial capacity. But is China dumping its production capacity to Africa? Africa is home to more than 1.5 billion people, 43% of which lack access to electricity. But Africa has also abundant renewable resources.
Actually, most of the Africans need investment in energy. Most of the African countries need to diversify the source of energy.
When huge needs and enormous potential collide, China softens the blow. The Intimpi solar power station in Zambia is a good example. With an annual capacity of 130 gigawatt hours, the power station, designed and built by a Chinese company, will cater to Zambia's industries.
That's the one that will help us to supply to the industrial sector, such as the mines and obviously the agriculture for the irrigation-based farming that we're talking about.
Besides, during the construction, over 1,200 locals have been trained to provide skilled workers to new energy projects. Since the start of the Belt and Road Initiative in 2013, China has committed itself to helping improve partners' countries' industrial capacity. Currently, there are more than 3,500 Chinese enterprises operating in Africa. By 2023, China has helped build more than 50 industrial parks in Africa. These gigantic centers for manufacturing and logistics have spurred growth in their host countries and led many to believe that Africa could well be the world's next manufacturing factory.
I've now talked to more than 50 Chinese entrepreneurs in Africa. One really common sentence I hear is, "This is just like my hometown 30 years ago." This next place for global manufacturing may very well be Africa.
The Eastern Industry Zone is a good example. This cooperation project with China was Ethiopia's first industrial park. It houses nearly 150 companies, which in turn provide about 23,000 jobs.
I used to work in a small garage with poor payment. Here I am enjoying a better salary, more than 3 times what I used to earn.
This factory is unique in our country. It has the most advanced equipment
and the Chinese are teaching their technology to us, to Africa.
Driven by industrial parks, Ethiopia's GDP remained at a growth rate of above 8% between 2010 and 2020. This is how China cooperates with African countries. What about the West? For centuries, the West has regarded Africa as a source of raw materials, disrupting Africa's value addition. Their negative impacts are so profound that even after independence, many African countries struggle to catch up with industrialization. Today, the development of this continent is still overlooked by Western countries.
It seems as if U.S. response in Africa was not driven by Africans' needs, but by a need to respond to what China was doing in Africa.
When the U.S. leaders visit Africa, they talk about China, but when Chinese officials visit Africa, they talk about trade and development, echoes one internet user. China plays a leading role in the global new energy sector and is now expanding its reach into the African market in advanced green technologies. China's Goshen High Tech and the Moroccan government have recently signed an agreement to establish the country's first electric vehicle battery gigafactory.
This agreement is very important as it completes the value chain which we are building on batteries for electric vehicles.
Through such cooperation projects, Chinese manufacturers have introduced domestic technologies to Africa and shared their experience, contributing to Africa's industrial progress. You see, that's the difference. China doesn't use Africa for geopolitical purposes, nor as the recipient of so-called China's industrial overcapacity. China is partnering with Africa while boosting its traditional industry capacity, introducing new and high-tech know-how, and building future-oriented green projects to achieve a win-win result.
V další reportáži se podíváme na krátký projev prezidenta Si Ťin pchinga k čínsko-africké spolupráci.
中国和非洲占世界总人口的1/3，没有中非的现代化，就没有世界的现代化。未来3年，中方愿同非方开展中非携手推进现代化10大伙伴行动，深化中非合作，引领全球南方现代化。非洲有句言语：同路人才是真朋友。现代化道路上，一个都不能少，一国都不能掉队。让我们凝聚起28亿多中非人民的磅礴力量，在现代化征程上携手同行，以中非现代化助力全球南方现代化，绘就人类发展史上崭新画卷，共同推动世界走向和平、安全、繁荣、进步的光明前景。
Pokud se vám toto video líbilo, dejte like, odběr a sdílejte.
V posledních desetiletích se mnoho západních médií a politiků snaží označit aktivity Číny v Africe za kolonialismus. Tento termín je tradičně spojován s drancováním Afriky západními mocnostmi. Ale nyní je používán k popisu čínských investic a spolupráce na africkém kontinentu. Nicméně, afričtí lídři, jako prezident Burundi Evariste Ndayishimiye a prezident Sierra Leone Julius Maada Bio, odmítají tato obvinění a zdůrazňují, že Čína nepřichází do Afriky s cílem dobývat nebo ovládat. ale na základě vzájemně výhodných podmínek.
Chinese colonialism? China in Africa. Win-win development or a new colonialism? Why loan sharks like China are Africa's new colonizers? Is China a new colonial power? Colonialism, a term frequently found in history textbooks, typically associated with the Western plundering of the Americas, Africa, and Asia, has now been repurposed by certain Western media and politicians to describe China's activities in Africa over the past decades.
La Chine n'est pas venue pour conquérir les autres. Mais le problème qui se pose, c'est qu'il y a des puissances qui voudraient s'imposer, qui voudraient dicter leur politique dans les pays africains, qui veulent s'ingérer dans les affaires. La Chine n'a pas de conditions.
Africa's relationship with China is under scrutiny, and quite a lot of people, organizations, countries are trying to look at this as predatory. I would speak on behalf of my own country and say that we are not fools. We have gone willingly into a relationship that we think is a win-win. We have relationships with other institutions around countries around the world, and that has been going on for a century, and we have not benefited.
So why does the West accuse China of practicing colonialism in Africa?
Et qu'il y a d'autres puissances qui colonisent, qui voient la puissance de la Chine, qui veulent collaborer avec les Africains, alors qu'il peut y avoir une idéologie de néocolonialisme, une idéologie de suivre l'idéologie des autres.
We have to understand that we are discussing this within the context of an anti-Chinese hysteria, which is deliberately fueled by Western government, Western intelligence agencies, and their media. There's a vigorous anti-Chinese hysteria.
Then, what is the current state of China-Africa relations? China has played a pivotal role in contributing to Africa's development by constructing and renovating vital infrastructure like dams, roads, and hospitals, which have bolstered regional integration, trade, and industrialization. Hence, most African nations value their cooperation with China because it supports their development goals. For example, Nigeria hopes that collaboration with China will stabilize its economy amid declining oil prices. Meanwhile, East African countries like Kenya are partnering with China to enhance regional connectivity through infrastructure development. In healthcare, China's medical aid support has significantly improved access and well-being. Education and technical training initiatives such as scholarships and the establishment of Confucius Institutes and Luban workshops, etc., have enhanced human capital and supported Africa's modernization.
We have a strong relationship with China, and it's a win-win relationship. Chinese people are bringing to Egypt a lot of know-how, a lot of commodities that would be very expensive for us to produce in-house, trading, so we are exporting a lot of stuff also to China.
China-Africa cooperation, in stark contrast to the colonial mindsets of some Western nations, is based on mutual respect, equality, and shared benefits, making it a model for South-South cooperation. And how do Africans view China-Africa relations and the accusation that China is a rising colonial power?
I beg to differ. So I know what is colonism. Colonism is different from cooperation.
Africa is open for business as long as we're doing business on an equal footing. Then of course it's not colonialism, it's just business.
At the end of the day, the world is made by people who actually do things, right? If people complain about this, then it's colonialism for the whole world.
And Africa, where China and Africa have something in common, is that both China and Africa had 100 years of humiliation at the hands of Western colonial powers. So it is ironic that the very same powers have the audacity to use the very same term towards China.
Claims that China is colonizing Africa missed the mark. In fact, China-Africa cooperation exemplifies international relations based on equality, not domination, showcasing a new, sincere approach to global partnerships rooted in mutual respect and benefit. At the 2024 summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, leaders from both sides will share their foresights and foster cooperation based on the theme joining hands to advance modernization and build a high-level China-Africa community with a shared future. Together, China and Africa will drive global modernization and shared development.